back with another episode of the Branders Magazine, Talking with Branders podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Bacons, and today I'm joined in the studio by the one and only Joseph Zala. He's a restaurant branding expert, the VP of Digital Experiences at 3 Owl, and a best-selling author of not just one, but two books. One of them, and I love this title, Stop Blasting My Mama. Yeah, she called me, knock that shit off. And the second one is The Bullhearted Brand, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But Joseph, welcome to the studio. Thanks for joining us.
Man, it's awesome to be here. I love it.
For those who have no idea who you are, tell everyone, like in 30 seconds, a little bit about yourself. The elevator pitch.
Yeah, first, I'm shocked that I haven't been heard of and hurt a little bit.
Like I have to get your books on the bookcase is what I
know some that can be replaced up there. But no, yes, I'm Joseph Zala. For 20 plus years, unfortunately, you can tell by the gray hair, have been an absolute admirer, lover, and passionate, I would say hobbyist maybe, but I got paid, so professional in the branding world. Started my own agency in 2003, built that up, sold it to another agency. That's a long story as to how I feel about that, but it was a good sell at first, let's put it that way, and have penned a few books. My motivating belief is knowledge should be shared, and a rising tide raises all ships. I notoriously, or maybe happily, don't agree with the traditional ideas of competition. You win some, you lose some, but I think we're all in this together, and the clients are the ones who win out when we think like that. Yeah. And yeah, wrote some books. Stop Blasting My Mama, currently out of print, actually in the process of rewriting that one. Bullhearted Brand came out a couple years ago, raised $12K on a Kickstarter to get that baby to the world. And then my new book, Mass Behaving, comes out soon, and I will be sure to get you a copy. But your friend Lewis he gave me a little bit of help on that one and a nice little soundbite.
Oh, that's great. He's what he's done with the magazine, what he's done with just moving this notion of building great brands forward is incredible. And I like what you just said, Joseph. You said like you are a hobbyist, but you get paid as a professional.
That's right.
That's very philosophical of you, right? I think like I'm a philosophical guy, and like the greatest philosophers never call themselves philosophers. They're just trying to acquire knowledge, and we're all students, I suppose. And I just really enjoy the way you position that. You work a lot with food and beverage, with restaurants, which is such a fun niche, and I've had my share of experiences with many different types of brands, but. What do you feel is that secret sauce to creating an irresistible like restaurant or food brand in 2024? Because it's vastly different than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's a very big question, loaded more than a baked potato.
Puns are coming left and right.
Can't help it. They just. I'm a father of two under two. The dad jokes are plenty. Yeah.
I got 1 2-year-old, and you have 2 under 2.
Yeah, it's great. Wow. Love every second of it. But yeah, so I wish there was an easy, magic one-liner, or even what I think most people are looking for is a silver bullet, or even just a reinforcement of maybe what folks watching this want to hear, which is it's all about the brand. Yeah. It's not all about one thing. It's all about the brand strategy, and before that, understanding on all sides of the table, or just everyone at the table, if you think more of the King Arthur approach of a circular table, everyone understanding that all decisions must come from a singular source, and that source is not one or two persons' guts or gut thinking, and that brand strategy is business strategy, and not the other way around, and not separate. And I think that's where so many people in our industry of branding, as well as many other industries, including restaurants, completely get it wrong. Like, I swear, Stephen, if I see one more post of someone saying, your brand is not your logo, I'm like, dude, whoever you're talking to, stop talking to them. Because if you're talking to someone who thinks a brand is a logo, you are wasting your time, especially in 2024.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would say it's understanding that branding is a strategic endeavor, which at its core is a psychological endeavor more than anything. And then having the right people at the table to take their part in their department, their purview, whatever their action items, and build from it. So if it's the chef, the brand strategy should be partially built by that person, and they should be able to take that and start to create a menu that is not only delicious, but deliciously on brand.
Yeah.
And then the same thing for hiring, financials, leadership, everyone.
Do you find that, in my experience, restaurateurs and chefs, right? Like, they're business savvy in their own right, but they don't look at things the way you and I would look at things. How much educating are you doing along the way to instilling like why this is important?
Yeah, I don't know how to quantify the answer. I would just say a lot, to the point where I wrote a book on it, and it's like the first thing I'm like, you should read or listen to this, because I don't want to have to repeat it, and I don't want to have to tell you after you've stepped in a very obvious trap. And I'm like, if you read this book and you understand it and you have everyone else read it, you will start strong. It's not going to tell you the ones and zeros. It's not going to tell you the P&L statements and how to look at them and how to optimize. It's not even going to tell you how to hire and treat your employees right. There are plenty of books on that.
Right.
But it'll give you a foundational knowledge. So I spend a lot of time, I hate to say education because it almost has a condescending tone, but it's more like coaching up and sort of maybe deprogramming a little bit of what others have thought. And then also massaging them to be not only willing and open to accepting outside thinking and or having to backtrack a little, but embracing it and actually loving it. So evolution, one thing is like evolution, it is an inevitability. Avoiding it is when people really start to mess up. I'm looking at you, Kodak and Radio Shack. Avoiding evolution is just futile and stupid. So if you can learn to love it and be ready for it and learn to not be so rigid, then you can build amazing brands that are progressive, fluid, and malleable in all the right ways.
That word fluid is what came to my mind as you were talking about the Kodaks and the Blockbusters and all the insert brand here. It's about being fluid to market. It's about being fluid to changing customers.
Absolutely.
And I don't think there's a bigger industry that has just changing fads. I'm not even going to call them trends. I'm calling them fads.
Yep.
Like the restaurant industry. Right, gluten-free was the rage, then there was, the impossible meats, and now we're going into the next trends. What are you seeing in regards to trends that like you can't ignore right now? Like you have to pay attention to.
Yeah. So I'll preface this with a little bit of my thinking is less on the startup restaurant brand when I talk about this stuff, mainly because my full-time focus at 3 Owl and our sister, well, we call it a wing because Owl, our sister wing, which is Rapturous, which focuses on restaurants. We work with large multi-unit brands that are of 30 units or more, up to like 500
guys or
yeah, usually at that scale. Yeah, so Crystal Burgers and Perkins and the list goes on. We have a number of brands there. So my thinking there and from my lens is it's less about the food than many would think. And now more than ever, it's about catching up with the technological advances that have been long ignored. So the industry as a whole was notably and incredulously not tech savvy.
Sure.
And then the pandemic hit. And then nobody were going to restaurants. And then they were like, wait, we got to figure some stuff out like now. And that sparked, I think, a lot of good in the industry. And with that comes a stronger brand experience in what is new to this industry or newer compared to others. And that is in the form of the digital brand experience and how that complements, accentuates, and builds on the physical. And then the nuances of food and how do I get Steven this hoagie that's toasted in a way that is still kind of hot and not soggy and still yummy, knowing that it probably won't be exactly the same as if you grabbed it over the counter. Yeah. So when I say technology, I don't mean just what we all went to, which is I focus on web, app, kiosk, like user interfaces and all that, but it's also the technology which starts to nerd me out a lot. And like, how do I get this food to this person in a way where it's still delicious? And the technologies there start to get, which should hopefully encourage a lot of our print lovers out there, like materials, substrates, and how can I create a better paper, quote unquote, product that can keep this at the temperature it needs to be kept without it sweating. And like, that's what causes the sogginess. And I'll probably stop here because I'm going to go in deep into a world of nerdiness when it comes to like that stuff.
No, but it's so fascinating to think about, because I think that you're right. Like, I think so many of us think about digital menu boards and, how to get a better speaker system at your drive-through, or just some of the tech, the kiosks inside of the restaurant, or whatever. But when you start to think about, I don't want to call it this, the internal infrastructure of getting the food from grill to mouth, that's the whole customer journey. That's the whole journey right there. Mm-hmm. And I don't think a lot of branders are thinking about, and I know marketers aren't thinking about it, and I hope the architects are starting to think about it when they start to look at the footprint. But it's a really interesting convergence. How often are you working with architects on like designing out new footprints and new environments so that digital isn't an afterthought, but it's like native to the design?
Yeah, good question. Not as much as I would like.
Yeah.
Mainly because at this scale, this kind of gets into the nuances of this industry, but franchisors can't force partnerships on the franchisees.
Okay.
So the way the marketing, the quote unquote marketing fund works in a franchise system is X percent of sales from that particular franchisee goes into a corporate overarching bucket. They are also usually committed to investing a smaller percentage, usually half of the overall, of their own money into local store marketing. And in that case, they cannot be forced into a particular anything. They're given a brand book. They're given maybe some suggestions as a helping hand. But if franchisee X wants to hire his sister's boyfriend's best friend to do marketing, then so be it. Same thing with architects. So there are architects that intelligently will say, "Hey, I have built over 100 Burger Kings, so I know that company. I know their standards. You should hire me." But Burger King can't say,
not a mandate.
You have to do this. Yeah, you have to use this company. And that's with at least the build. So I don't get to do it as much as I would like, but I do get to affect some of the things from the top down in the digital frameworks, especially the digital experiences. And that is just rapidly growing.
The innovation that we're seeing within restaurants is just mind-boggling. And like COVID was the big, it forced restaurants to adapt or die. And I think that's why that quote has become a thing.
Yep.
What mistakes have you seen brands make since then?
Mistakes for me will always be partially monetary, measurably monetary. There's also, there's also social and public relations mistakes that you could look at. I think it's hard to say it's a mistake, but there was a lot of time and energy invested into launching what are called ghost or virtual brands.
Sure, like Ghost Kitchen.
That's right.
Dash or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Stephen and Joseph have a sandwich shop on the corner of 5th and Main, and we have all these ingredients, and we could buy into or create a brand that only exists on third-party delivery apps like DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub, yada yada, that serve meatballs or sliders and wings. Wings was the one, dude. We don't need another wings concept. For anyone that's thinking of opening a restaurant, I promise you, wings, we're good. We got them.
We got that market covered.
We know where to get them, and there is not a flavor that we can't find. So don't do it. It's a waste of time and money. But I think that arguably could have been a mistake, because I would say the money that was invested in the form of time and energy in developing the menu and creating the brand, quote unquote, look and feel, which really is just a logo and maybe some packaging if you're lucky.
Yeah.
All of that should have been invested in technological upgrades to reinforce the core. And so I think there were a lot of brands who just they turned their eye away from the prize in the wrong way and didn't make the necessary shifts forward where they should have.
They were chasing like that short-term gain.
That's right.
Which,
yeah, you don't blame them, right? Like they're literally hurting. They're sinking. So it's
right.
Right. I don't blame you, but long term, I don't think it's been a great play. Some have aced it. Some have done a really good job. Wow Bao is one of them. They're an Asian Chinese bao buns. Delicious little tasty nuggets. They did a good job, but the CEO there is quite prolific and pragmatic. And not only did they open their concept up to ghost kitchening, meaning I don't think Wow Bao created a ghost kitchen, but they were like, guess what? We have this product. We'll just ship it to you. You can heat them up and make money off of it. And so they expanded their footprint as a ghost kitchen and a standalone. And then he started getting into, standalone kiosks, like literally where you can order bao buns from like a vending machine, and boom, they come out, as well as retail, so you can get them in the frozen aisle. So I think he was quite intelligent about the way he extended that brand and that brand experience into alternative means. And
there's a lot of brands that have horror stories with brand extensions. Extending too quickly, extending too far. Do you feel like the food industry is different on how they view extensions? Like if you have a really good restaurant, is it easier for you to all of a sudden put a sauce on the shelf or something frozen than, let's just say, one of the brands I work with, Dude Wipes, a couple of years ago wanted to make deodorant. Right?
Yeah.
It didn't really work for them. It was kind of outside their core. So they extended, but then they brought it back. You think restaurant brands have an easier path to extension?
Easier path, yes. Because essentially the restaurant, if you're talking specifically about ushering in or moving into the CPG and retail world, the good news is with a restaurant, you have a live source of data. Mm-hmm. And you can use that data to fuel some of the decisions before you go to market, as opposed to, well, I think people are going to like this. Yeah, this octopus raspberry dressing chimichanga.
Sure.
Because I love it, so everyone else will. Mm-hmm. But what I find is in the retail game and the restaurant game, you really got to find a mix of familiarity with enough uniqueness to get attention. And so I make the joke, I think I mentioned it in the book, and I've written articles on it, where for those that don't know, pioneering sucks. Pioneers like died of dysentery and then like resorted to like cannibalism. It's the people who came after the pioneers. So it's like, oh, look at this path. It looks like someone's been down here a little bit, and you just do it better. That's Apple computers. That's their brilliance. Their brilliance. Like get some tech nerd talking about their ire for Apple. Like they don't create anything new. I'm like, no, because they're smart.
Right. It's almost like that, in the restaurant business, you don't, like when you're building out a restaurant, you're probably building it out for the next tenant.
Yeah.
Especially when you're building out a restaurant. That's such an interesting take with the pioneer mentality.
Yeah. Well, I would say that, the build outs, going back to that, I said this to every client that I ever worked with that was in startup. Like if you're pouring concrete on your first location, you are pouring out your budget and you're doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. Like you don't know if people are even going to like this, like you need to find a second or third gen where some other idiot has spent that money to build out install the hood system, which is like $30,000 to like $60,000, and the grease trapping and yada yada. Like you're not going to get the perfect look that you want, but you'll be able to make it look more than good enough to get the market test to see if the thing even has legs. Right.
That MVP mentality is even more crucial.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you could pop up your way into startup, that's even better. Like do some pop-ups, do some events, see if people want this. Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, because again, the unfortunate and wonderful thing about the food industry is that really anyone can get into it. But I would say only a few, like many industries, will actually survive. And those people are the ones, much like our own, who realize it's actually very little to do with food and very much to do with business.
Yeah.
And like making smart financial decisions, understanding EBITDA and the P&Ls. Yeah. And I'm saying this to all the would-be designers and creatives that want to start their own studio. Bad news is you actually don't do a lot of design. You do a lot of looking at contracts and invoicing. And, you need to understand where your money is going out the door, and you need to understand how to price things better in order to actually grow to a certain level where you can sustain at least a small team.
Right.
And it's the same thing with restaurants. Like the worst thing I've seen is I have a friend out on a beautiful island who has a number of restaurants. And I remember when I first started working with him, he's like, hey, I can't talk today because I got to fix the plumbing. And I'm like, bro, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you fixing the plumbing? He's like, because it's just cheaper. I'm like, no, it's actually not cheaper for the owner to be underneath the counter fixing pipes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, it's an interesting world, but yeah.
For sure is. I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn here.
I like it.
I'm so fascinated by Gen Z.
Why?
Yeah. I'm kidding. Well, we don't actually be fascinated with Gen Alpha. We both have like little ones, right? That's that next generation, the Alphas.
Yeah.
I'm seeing so many trends, especially within beverages. Especially within like no alcoholic beverages, and just a focus on brand and packaging and vibrancy. And what is it about Gen Z that, in your opinion, like, what are they looking for with restaurants and with beverages?
Yeah, so we just did a webinar with friends of ours from an agency, Matana, and I just totally blanked on their agency name.
Insert an agency name here.
Yeah, please insert the agency name. So I'm gonna find it real quick. Vital with a Y. Okay. VYTAL. They're amazing people. I love them so much. And if they're listening, I'm sorry. So we just did a webinar. They're a Gen Z agency that has like a group of Gen Z creators and also just normal thinkers that give feedback. And it's really interesting when they get into what drives them. And I have to say, so far, nothing has really sparked, oh, wow, I didn't see that coming. It's they like brands who take a stand for something.
Purpose.
But then there's purpose washing, and you start getting into a very dangerous world where you have to be careful of the flag you wave, and you also have to have the guts and the tenets to be able to say, that's not my flag.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but it's just not where we're going to go. I think more than ever, there are things that are not being said that are being said with the wallet. And so one of those things is value, which was overused for so long, but it's back. And the equation is simple. My expectations of what I'm buying are here, and the price is lower, and then what I actually got was worth more. That's the equation. Like, that is value. There are so many hucksters and hustlers out there that put a beautiful look on a crappy product. And I think this generation and younger generations have very acute noses for it. And I think that's why you start to see this resurgence of what I would call lo-fi by design, or sort of like this design aesthetic that purposefully looks not good. Yeah. And good meaning what we have been trained to say is good design. The pentagram model of design, the Paul Rands, the list goes on. And it's like, I think there's actually a rejection of that pristine, perfect look, because there's almost a hallmark of, this is imperfect, I'm imperfect, and because this is imperfect, this might be realer and more authentic. And I think it's a backlash to the purpose washing and this overextension of beautiful brands, at least by the standards I just mentioned.
I love the purpose washing. I don't hear that enough. You hear greenwashing, you hear all these other terms, but it's sort of that becomes that trend, becomes that fad, and people are trying to. And I'm not been guilty of it, but I've been tasked with an assignment by a brand to create a purpose campaign for them that was just shoving the square into the circle, and it was a tough assignment, and I did great strategy work. I don't think it's ever going to see the light of day, but it was a really tough assignment because they were purpose washing right there.
Right.
Lo-fi by design, right? Like years ago, Instagram was just full of perfection. Perfect photos. It was the perfect lighting. It was the perfect saturation. Everything was perfect. And wow, have we just gone 180 on that? And I think you're absolutely right, Joseph. Like there's more emphasis on value, especially with economic uncertainty, especially with inflation and all those worries that are out there. But I really think that they are they're going to see through that bullshit for better or for worse, and that's a really unique thing as a marketer because we've been trained to sell bullshit sometimes. It's what we do. Want to
more than we want to admit, right?
I don't want to say we've sold our soul, but we've gotten damn near close here. So that's what I think makes it makes Gen Z really unique for people like us.
Yeah, I think their nose, it's really like they have this constant feed. For those that are listening, I'm flicking my thumb upward in a motion of like Instagram and TikTok. Therefore they are also fickle. So not only can they get the feed and the content that they want when they want it, no questions asked, they can also get the humans that they want with online dating. And I think what you're starting to see is people are starting to it may be a little bit now, but I think people are starting to realize the negative effects of the on-demand immediacy generation and what that actually means. And so what you start to see is they search out, I hate this word, craft and authentic craft a lot more. They reject big brand homogeny a lot more. They're looking for the unexpected honesty in ways that might not be logical to even the marketer or brander thinking. And that I'm of the firm belief, look, I like McDonald's, man. I'm not going to make apologies for it, because McDonald's has a very clear time and place, and I know when I want it. What's that?
It's nostalgic.
Well, there's nostalgia, but it's also like, I'm in a hurry. I need something in my stomach that has a lot of sodium to fool me into thinking it's really good. I know this isn't health food, and I'm going to buy it, and it's cheap, and I'm going to eat it, and I'm going to move along with my day. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of that where it's like, I'm not trying to project, but it's more like the categorization effect. And that's what really makes a strong brand or one of the tenets is easy to categorize. And so when you are easy to categorize, and that could be by the moment or in a more macro world, when you're easy to categorize, people tend to accept you quicker. So I think there are too many brands, especially in the restaurant industry and food and CPG, that are vying for almost like the everything for everyone or the same for a niche group of people. So a good example of this, going back to your client, either current or former, I forget what you said, but dude wipes. Easy to categorize. There are a lot of wipes on the market. That one is for a guy. I'm a guy. I want a wipe. That's my brand, Yeah. And it's the brutal honesty of it. They're not pulling punches. They didn't call it something that had a cliche masculine vibe. I'm trying to think of a funny name off the top of my head. I'm just running short, but no, it's just to the point, in your face. We're a busy world. This is what it is. Clarity. Now, clarity, easy to categorize. Those things are all such important tenets, and I think this generation is attracted to that more and more, especially as they get fooled on dating apps, as they get fooled on other apps. I think Wish is the funniest one. Like when you buy things on Wish, it's kind of oddly unexpected what you get.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I haven't used it, but like it's you see the jokes on Instagram and TikTok where it's like what I saw on Wish versus what I got, and it's like what you get is actually terrible, but it's so funny. Because it's just like this cheap knockoff product. So I think everyone's getting really, really bogged down by that. And then that goes into the need and want for authenticity and honesty and I think that goes into just the psychology of things. Like, I don't want to spend $40 on something to get $20 value.
Yeah.
Like, I'll spend $40 if I'm going to get $40 or $80 in value. And so I think we're finding a world that is going to step away from a lot of the mainstream stuff and start to really attach themselves to honest brands. And back to purpose and purpose washing, like, you don't have to take a stand on every single social issue. In fact, a lot of Gen Z saying, if you don't take a stand, that's okay. Just be honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what the hell does yeah, like, dude, sell your stinky water that has fizzy in it and just do that and bro out. But the problem with Bud and Budweiser and some of these other brands is I'm like dumping so many theories here. I apologize. But like, I think of brands as a ripple effect. You toss a stone into the water. And I fear that brands like Budweiser have gotten to such an outward ripple that it's almost like, where do we go? And I know some people don't want to hear this, but the globe is capitalistic. And for everyone that hates capitalism has a 401k, I'll just let you know that you're doing it wrong. Because your 401k is directly tied to capitalism and the success of capitalism.
Sure.
And so if you are invested in Budweiser, you want to see returns, and those returns are in the form of more sales. So I think a brand like Buzz, like a lot of brands, one of maybe the downfalls of the current capitalistic state that we have is that you can't stop growing.
Mm-hmm.
And that infinite growth mentality and model, I think, does have negative implications where brands start to make poor decisions and start to align themselves with social causes that they have really no business being a part of.
They have to check a box.
Right, or listening to the loudest little faction instead of your core, which is larger.
Yeah.
And that may sound rude, and I don't mean that this little faction doesn't have a voice and shouldn't, but it's just as a brand, I think you need to select who you align with and then have the guts to say, it's just not a conversation we are equipped to be a part of. Because the fact is once you open the door, then they start to look for the anti-authenticity, the inauthenticity, and they will find it.
Oh yeah.
And that's a big issue is, because of the information age, the world is at your fingertips and a world of knowledge. Case in point, it's probably good that Volkswagen keeps, low profiles and stuff on on a lot of things, because if you look at what Volkswagen was doing around the 1940s, it's not going to be a good look.
It's not good.
Yeah, same thing with Hugo Boss. So it's sort of like tread lightly, carry a big stick.
There are stones that don't need to be turned over.
That's right. Let's leave it where it is.
Joseph, what an engaging conversation. I cannot wait to have you back on again to continue this talk. I know that we were joking before we pressed the record button that we're going to have like a book review session.
Oh, yeah.
Throw it out to the ether, but this is a wrap for now. For those listening that want to find you online, drop your URLs and where you could be found on the social networks.
Yeah. So every week I post the world's most beautiful restaurant branding and hotel branding and food and beverage branding projects. Feel free to hit me at bullhearted.co. That's without the M.co. And you can find me at bullheartedco on your standard places like Instagram. I'm very active there, and Twitter. And love the commentary. And Stephen, I love what you're doing for our community. And I can't wait to talk to you again.
Awesome. And for more on the Branders Magazine, Talking with Branders podcast, go to brandersmagazine.com. And for more on me, well, you can find me at stephenpicanza.com. Until next time, peace out, everyone.